Fantastic. Okay, good. So thanks everyone for attending. I was a bit worried that everyone might be sick to death of talking about novel foods, but it's great to see all of you here. I'm broadcasting live from London, and I just want to say thank you to Alexej and the Alphagreen team for letting me do these webinars. But the novel food deadline is approaching really, really quickly, so no time to waste. You guys probably have a rough idea of how it goes. We'll have a look at the split from the UK and Europe and see what the UK regulatory regime is looking at. It's going to be really basic at the beginning, okay? So if it's stuff you already know, stick with me. We'll start to get really, really technical in the middle part. And then the end is going to be a real look at how things are going to pan out the next couple of months and what will happen going forward. And as promised, I will be dishing up some gossip and rumour. My main goal today is to try and get to the end of this webinar without having libelled anybody or being subjected to a defamation claim. So wish me luck. So obviously we know the UK market is big. Novel food has been hanging over this sector for like a dark cloud for some time now. So it's good that the UK authorities have introduced a clear route to compliance. Obviously, being a regulatory lawyer, I love regulations. I think more is a good thing, but it really is a good thing for the industry. We want market stability and we want consumer confidence so that the CBD industry can continue to grow at the rapid rate that we expect. So what I'll be covering today is a brief history. So I'll go over what's happened previously, how we got to where we are. I'll cover what the actual authorization process is. The UK has mirrored the EU process, so it is the same with some important changes. We'll look at where the UK has diverged and how they've given us a clear route to compliance. And then this is probably going to be the most interesting part for CBD brands. I'll give some real examples of how you can achieve novel food compliance, because that's what we're here to do. It's not just about making a submission, it's about achieving novel food compliance. A couple of interesting difficulties and challenges ahead. So we've got the new product restriction, which I'll cover, and there's also something called the positive products list that you may not have heard of, which is quite interesting. And then finally, the big question, enforcement. Is there going to be big enforcement of novel foods post March 31st? And then finally, I'm just going to have a guessing game on how it's going to work going forward. So let's see what happens. Anyway, here we go. So a brief history. First of all, I want to take you back to 2018, and there was a real battle raging in the CBD sector here in the UK, a battle for control. And there's only one way to do it justice, really, I'm afraid. Hemp wars, that's exactly what was happening. The whole industry was split into two, okay? So on one side, you had the European Industrial Hemp Association and the Cannabis Trades Association, and they were the traditionalists. They really wanted to keep CBD out of the novel food regime, and they were really fighting hard for this. But on the other side, you have the Centre for Medicinal Cannabis, which formed the ACI, and these are the progressives. These guys probably saw which way the wind was blowing and just decided, look, novel food is going to happen. Let's try and implement it in a way that works. Obviously, the CMC had their reports on the CBD industry. 30 well-known brands were tested. Some of them didn't have any CBD in at all. So I think that's where the CMC probably saw the opportunity to intervene. It's definitely not a battle of good versus evil. As I said, I don't want to libel anyone, but it really, really was an exciting time. And I'll cover some of the major players later on in this presentation. Anyway, that's enough of that. Sorry about that. That was just me having some fun. Okay, so simple thing. What is a novel food? That's a Sharon fruit, by the way. I've never tried one, but apparently it is novel. So this is the regulation from the European Parliament and Council. So novel food is one that has not been consumed to a significant degree in the EU and the UK prior to 15th of May. So that's the determination date. If we haven't been consuming this product prior to that date on a regular basis, it is deemed to be novel. And that means that you can only place a novel food on the European market once the Commission has processed your novel food submission. So you have to achieve full marketing authorization to be able to sell the product legally in EU member states. Technically, that means a lot of the CBD in Europe is being sold unlawfully, but at present there is generally little to no enforcement. We are seeing some pockets of enforcement across the EU, but at the moment, CBD business seems to be continuing pretty well. March 2019, we went to the European Commission building in Brussels, and I'm not in this photo because I took it. And I'm just going to identify who we've got. So starting from the left as you face your screen, we've got Daniel Cruz from the European Industrial Hemp Association. Next to him is Jonathan Kirk, QC. So Jonathan is the top food and trading standards barrister in the UK. He basically writes the book on trading standards. There was a lovely gentleman from IRA, his name escapes me, I'm sorry. We've obviously got rockstar Lorenzo Romanesi in the middle. And then the heavy mob on the right-hand side is former chair of the CTA, Mike Harlington, and former director and CEO of British Cannabis, Tom Wetham. So we actually went to the European Commission and we presented to the working group on novel foods. It was really, really interesting. You have a panel of 56 food regulators there, so it's 2 from every member state. And we got to present, and Aya made a wonderful presentation about the history of hemp in the human diet and how, this shouldn't be novel. And they didn't listen to us at all, of course. And it was interesting because the Belgians and the Austrians were very negative about CBD. The Irish had quite a lot to say about it. The UK regulators didn't say a word. And at the time, I thought maybe it's because we'd voted to leave the EU and nobody cared what they had to think anymore. However, looking back, it could well have been that they knew that they were going to implement their own regime, and so they didn't really have anything to contribute. So that was a really, really interesting trip, but unfortunately it didn't achieve anything. So the catalogue, the EU has a catalogue, a novel food catalogue. Just checking you can see this slide, guys. Yes?
Yep.
Good. All right. Thank you so much. Okay. So this is the entry in the catalogue for hemp, Cannabis sativa L. And so it gives you all the common names, a description. The green tick actually means that it's not a novel food, so that you don't need to have novel food authorization to be able to put this product in a food. So hemp, the plant, is not novel. This is the other catalogue entry that we don't like. This is cannabinoids. So the cannabinoids in their isolated form or any way that the process has been changed from just a normal hemp product or hemp extract, the red X means that you do need novel food approval. So the way that the European Commission has justified this, the hemp plant is not novel. If I squeeze the juice out of it, then that should not be novel. As soon as I take that raw extract and I start putting it through additional processes, you are creating a new product, okay? And that's why it becomes a novel food. So under the regulations from 2015, there's a couple of really interesting articles to note. Article 10 obviously gives the procedure for submitting a dossier and making sure that it works. And Article 4 gives you the procedure for actual determination of novel food status. So what you can actually do, you can approach your domestic food regulator and ask them to clarify whether a product is actually novel. And you can submit your evidence as to whether you think it's novel or whether you think it's not novel. And there's quite a lot of talk about Article 4. Lots of organizations were thinking about doing a submission to try and persuade a domestic food regulator that CBD was not novel and therefore should not be included in the catalogue. IA were very interested in this. Whether they're still looking at that, I don't know. I would probably suggest it's too late, but who knows? Maybe something will still happen in that respect. Okay, look, the application itself is expensive and it's time consuming, okay? And this is why it's incredibly complex. It's a really complex scientific and technical submission. Here are probably the most important parts of the submission. So you need to do stability testing on your products, on your ingredients. That is usually done across 5 batches. So you have to produce 5 batches and demonstrate that you're getting the same product every time. All of you guys who do extraction or manufacturing will know that that's quite tough with cannabinoids, okay? Because, you know, what comes out the other end of the process can often be different. This is quite a controversial part because ADME generally involves rodent testing, and it's a big question as to whether or not we can call a product vegan friendly if it's been tested on rodents. So if anyone's asked the vegans how they feel about that, then I'd be really interested to hear about this. And here's the really big expensive part, the toxicology reports, genotoxicity, chronic toxicity, all of this. The reason why these studies are required is because of the way CBD is consumed. We are encouraging customers to take CBD every day as part of their daily diet on a regular basis for a very long time. So we need to know that it's safe. Now you probably ask the question, how many novel food applications am I currently managing? I can tell you it's 0. It's a big fat 0. And I'll tell you why. novel food is not a legal submission, okay? It is a technical regulatory submission, and I'll go into a bit more detail about what it comprises of, but you don't need a lawyer to submit a novel food application. A lawyer can't do it on their own. It's got to be, these studies have got to be carried out in a laboratory. So it's really important that people understand this is not a legal submission. Okay, so UK route to compliance. So the European regulators, we have mirrored their position, but their process works that you have to achieve full marketing authorization before you can actually sell the product on the market. Now, the European food regulators are considering applications. They stopped for a bit because of this nonsense with the narcotics business, but they've started up again. Currently, as far as I'm aware, there is only one application for CBD that has been validated, and that's Boris Banas, and he's got an approval for a synthetic CBD, I understand. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that is the case. But lots of companies have submitted their applications. They're currently being considered by the European Commission. We don't know when we're going to start to get some feedback. Okay, the UK decided to implement exactly the same process, but with some very important additions to the regime. So there's an exemption which allows CBD companies to continue to sell, provided they show a commitment to novel food compliance. So the UK regulators realised this industry is too big already. There's too many products available. We can't suddenly pull everything off the shelves. We can't stop the sale of these products. So they granted this exemption to the industry. You can continue to sell CBD products, provided you achieve novel food compliance by 31st of March 2021. So we've got a hard deadline for compliance, but companies can continue selling in the meantime. So I'll come to the deadline in a bit more detail later on. But what does compliance actually mean? And it means that you have to have either your ingredients or your finished products or both covered by a validated novel food application. Now, what does validation mean? So I stole this from the ACI website, but it gives you a really good idea of how long it takes to do these assessments, these scientific assessments, these laboratory studies. You can see, look, it's substantial, okay? What the UK regulators did, so technically prior to January 2021, we were still subject to European regulation. So the FSA actually couldn't formally consider dossiers last year at all. What they agreed to do is they agreed to look at dossiers on an informal basis and start providing feedback to companies that were looking to submit. And this was very practical and pragmatic because, it's a complex process. It's quite new to everybody. So it was good that they were willing to accept them on an informal basis. 1st of January 2021 comes along and the UK is now fully independent from EU regulations, and formal consideration of the novel food process started. So the FSA started looking at dossiers. Now, there was a lot of concern about whether the FSA had the resources to be able to consider all of these dossiers, because we don't know how many they were getting. And it looks like probably they're under a bit of pressure because there has been some information that you need to get your dossiers in quick because they're asking for 6 weeks for validation. So if you wanted to get feedback on your dossier, you're running out of time. There's also, I think there's a Business Can article today that said, in fact, if you don't get it in before 10th of February, then you may miss out altogether. So if you are submitting a dossier, please get it in this week, okay? What you might be looking for is an RFI, a request for further information, just a bit of feedback about how your dossier is and is there anything missing. If you don't get it in soon, then you are not going to get any feedback. And if you don't get it in before sort of middle of the month, you're going to miss out altogether. So validation is the initial stage where the FSA will carry out a preliminary review of your dossier. They'll have a look. They'll make sure that you've got everything in there that they are expecting to see, and you should get a validation number, which you can then put on your products. This is really, really important, okay? The dossier does not have to be complete. The FSA have confirmed that a commitment to completing the required studies will be sufficient. So as long as you can demonstrate that you're involved in a full toxicology assessment, the FSA will accept incomplete dossiers and still validate. So you can expect people to be adding to their dossiers even after the 31st of March 2021 passes, okay? So, routes to compliance. So I've made up some companies just to show some examples of how you can achieve novel food compliance. And we'll start with the beginning of the solar supply chain. So here's my made up company, London Hemp. And I'm sure you'll all agree that if law doesn't work out for me, I clearly have a career ahead of me in graphic design. So London Hemp is a licensed producer or an ingredients manufacturer, okay? One of the big companies. They produce wholesale CBD isolate and distillate, and they supply to the CBD market on a B2B basis. Okay, they're not selling direct to the consumer. They will almost certainly need to make their own novel food submission, covering their extraction and manufacturing processes. So all of these big companies will be definitely doing their own submissions. Most of them have got it done already. I'd be really surprised if any of the big ones hadn't done it yet. We then got in the middle, this is the Ince white labeling company. And so we do white labeling or contract manufacturing. And the likelihood is we buy in our ingredients in bulk, the distillate or the isolate from London Hemp. We manufacture CBD brands to order. We've got maybe around 30 of our own SKUs that we make. So 5%, 10%, 15%, gel caps, edibles, that sort of thing. And all of our SKUs, if we are going to white label them for people, they've got to be included in a novel food application. The product formulation has to be approved. It's not just the ingredients, okay? Now, there's two ways that Ince white labelers can do that. We can either make our own submission in relation to the products that we are carrying. So the 30 different SKUs, we could do a novel food submission in relation to those product formulations. Or we can team up with London Hemp and ask them to include our SKUs in their submission, and effectively we collaborate on a submission. Now, the FSA has very much been encouraging collaboration. What would the relationship between London Hemp and Ince white labelers look like? I don't know. But if London Hemp are spending a huge amount of money on an application and Ince wants their SKUs included, you can expect London Hemp to probably be saying, we are going to need a substantial sales arrangement that stretches into the future to make it worth our while. So very interesting relationships to look out for between white labelers and the ingredients manufacturers themselves. Here's a really important part, CBD brand compliance. So this is probably going to be most important for the attendees today. So we have Jappie CBD. This is my CBD company. As you can see there, I am on the bottle. This was back when I was able to get a haircut, and it probably will be a few months before I'll be able to do that again. So I am a consumer brand. I sell finished products direct to the consumers. Now, look, some brands do have control of their own manufacturing process, especially the bigger CBD companies. They will be doing the manufacturing, they'll be producing the products, and then they'll be selling them. So again, if you have control of your manufacturing process, you will likely have to make your own submission. Novel foods is about being aware of the manufacturing process. It's really, really important. If you are having your products white labeled, so let's say I ask Ince white labelers to make my products for me. I say, I want a 5% CBD, I want a 10%, I want a 15%. Ince will say, that's fine. We've got novel food approval for these products. They're quite simple products. We'll make them for you. You have your label and your details on there. And effectively, I would be piggybacking off Ince's novel food compliance, okay? Because they are producing a novel food compliant product, a final product, and it's just me putting my label on it. Here's where it gets complicated for CBD brands, okay? If you are having your products private labeled, so you are using your own specific formulation, then you are not going to be covered by your white labelers novel food compliance, okay? Because their compliance will take you maybe 80, 90% of the way. But if they are making a unique formulation for you, they will have not got approval for that formulation. So you would probably have to do a narrow novel food submission for your own specific formulations. Most CBD brands probably will back off from that and say, fine, I'll just use the SKUs available from the white labelers. If your current supplier cannot guarantee compliance, then you need to find a new supplier as soon as possible, okay? So some of the top white labelers in the UK, you've got the Taylor Mammons, you've got CBD manufacturing. These guys will have a solution in place. I know Mile High are moving into the white label business in a big way, Sativa Group as well. So really, shop around and look for a supplier that that has got their novel food house in order, because this is coming up now, and we are expecting to see enforcement. I think brand compliance is going to be heavily monitored, because it's these companies that are selling direct to the consumers. So, brands, you can probably expect quite a bit of scrutiny from the regulators, but we'll come to that. So you may not want to do this on your own. And again, as I said, the FSA has been encouraging a lot of collaboration within the sector. Okay, so there's two big consortiums here in the UK. You've got the European Industrial Hemp Association. They've got a massive consortium which they are putting together. You've also got the Association for the Cannabinoid Industry, so the ACI. They also have a big consortium which they are offering. So just to distinguish between the two, I'd probably say IRE is the more inclusive offering. They are really reaching out, especially to the SMEs and the brands, the smaller companies, and saying, look, we can help you with a novel food solution. IRE's submission is going to be big. IRE is doing the whole thing, the toxicology, the stability, everything. They're doing everything for all of the formulations as well. I've heard that they're trying to raise about 3.5 million euros to cover all of these studies. They say their whole studies are going to take about 18 months to complete, and they've had the nod from the FSA that they can add to the submission. So I'm told you can actually still get in with IRE. So if you don't have a novel food solution in place, then please speak to IRE this week, okay? The membership fees are based on revenue, so the bigger your company, the more expensive the membership fees are going to be. But just something to note, I saw again in Business Can today, I think IRE is offering a last minute deal for smaller brands, £15,000 payable over 2 years. So 5k up front, 5k in a year, and 5k in 2 years' time. And you can still be included in their consortium submission. So get in there quick. ACI, let's not mess about. ACI is highly influential in this industry, okay? They are playing a pivotal role in setting the regulatory standards for CBD in the UK, not just in relation to novel foods, but you can expect them to be very active in terms of testing methodology, THC content. There's a lot going on at the moment in relation to THC content, so you can probably expect some big announcements on that. And the ACI are right there in the middle of it. They're mostly focused on the top end of the sector, so the ingredients manufacturers, the licensed producers, and the very big CBD brands, they will likely have joined the ACI, and probably most of them have already submitted their dossiers. So slightly different from IRE, the ACI, my understanding is that they are producing the central toxicology study for their members, but their members will still make their own submissions. They will just be using information from the ACI as the central part of their dossier. ACI members will still have their own individual submissions going into the FSA. Again, not too sure about the figures. So again, if I'm wrong, please correct me, but it's expensive. I've heard 25k plus a year. But look, you're getting the people with the ear of the regulators acting for you. So you're probably getting what you pay for there. It may be too late to join. I don't know. I suspect that it probably is. If you haven't had contact with the ACI, then do reach out to them. Dr. Batara there is great. She knows novel foods up and down, but you may be too late now. IRE is probably your best option if you are a smaller company and you don't have your novel food compliance solution in place. So just to show that I am fair, I stole this from the IRE offering. I'm probably there is a potential route to circumvent the novel food regime, and lots of companies are looking at this in a big way. So you've got your goopy raw extra. I'm not a lab guy, so I don't know about that. But anyway, the FSA website clearly says hemp and related products such as cold pressed oils are not novel because there is evidence to show a history of consumption before May 1997. So as I said before, hemp is not novel. You squeeze the juice out of it, that is not novel either. And that makes sense. It would be like saying, it'd be like saying oranges are fine and orange juice is no good. Okay, so you may be able to circumvent your novel food obligations by selling a cold press extract. There's a problem, though. A cold press extract may often have difficulties when it comes to THC content, so you could escape the novel foods regulatory regime and instead find yourself in trouble for too much THC in your product. So it's definitely something to consider, but it's not as clear-cut as everyone seems to be making out. Lots of companies are going to wait and see what sort of enforcement takes place. It's not really something I would be recommending, but I'm sure it is going to happen. Even worse, some companies could consider marketing the same products as not for human consumption. Again, I do not condone that at all. It's highly undesirable, I think, for this industry, and it's not the direction that we want to be heading in. So really, most companies have seen which way the wind is blowing, and they've got on board with a novel food program. Now we're back to our friends at the FSA. So the new product restriction. This is quite controversial. I'm not really fully in agreement with this, but it is happening. So the FSA announced their regime on the 13th of February 2020. So they gave this exemption for companies to continue trading, but they attached a restriction. They said no new products can be placed on the market. Okay. So therefore, if your product was not available in the UK prior to the 13th of February when the announcement was made, then you should not be introducing any products to the UK market. So existing companies with their existing product line can continue to sell those products. They can't introduce any new products or SKUs to their offering, and new companies are not supposed to bring any products to the market either. Now, this means enforcement is already taking place. I'm aware of some companies have been receiving letters from local authority trading standards along the lines of, we've looked at your product line, we know what you're currently selling. If you introduce any new products, you will be hearing from us. So even before the deadline has been achieved, trading standards have been active in this area. So it's definitely something to be aware of. The FSA accepts that this restriction is going to kill innovation in the sector for the next couple of years. The rationale behind this restriction is they just want companies already selling to focus on achieving novel food compliance. Okay, they want to make sure that that is the priority. They don't want companies thinking about new product or new product lines or that sort of thing. So they accept a couple of years, not much in the way of new products, new innovative products coming to the market. But the expectation from the FSA is that once everyone gets to grips with this regime, then you'll start to see innovation coming back to the sector in a big way, okay? Now, here are my issues. Let me just cover this quickly, the positive products list. So this is some more gossip and rumor that I have heard about from my network. This is apparently a work in process. So novel food applicants will be contacted by the FSA to confirm which products are covered by their applications. Furthermore, they will also establish which products were on the UK market before the 13th of February 2020. And they may ask for evidence of sales, purchasing orders, sales invoices. So that's their definition of what on the market means. So be wary if you have introduced a new product. You've got to have your wits about you, because they may ask the question, well, when did you actually put this on the market? What is a new product? This is something where this is my concern. Okay, so if I go to a novel food compliant company, let's say Ince white labelers, and I say, give me my 5% CBD, but I want to name it Jappie CBD and I want to put my face on it. Is that a new product? If they sell it to me in a red box and I put it into a blue box, it's the same product on the inside. This is a safety analysis, so it's a safe product. If I just change the label, if I change the packaging, have I created a new product? I don't think that's how that rule should be applied, but I think the FSA thinks differently on that issue at the moment. So it's really, really complex, guys. You need to watch out for this. Enforcement. Now, this is going to be really, really interesting. So enforcement is devolved to local authority trading standards, but there is also a national trading standards organization. Trading standards, as it says, is about consumer safety, protecting consumers. And I think this is where the CBD industry has had a problem. Just going back to that CMC report, a few of those brands didn't have any CBD in them at all. And that's not good for business. There were a few cowboys in the market who were selling suboptimal products. And the idea is that novel food is supposed to push them out of the sector, but it will only work if there is enforcement. So the FSA is talking a really good game about enforcement here. They're expecting to heavily enforce on this from the 1st of April. You can imagine that all of these companies that have submitted a dossier, that have submitted a novel food application, they are going to be pissed if there isn't any enforcement. You know, if I'd spent hundreds of thousands of pounds, and some companies have spent huge amounts of money on novel food compliance, and then my competitor is able to sell, hasn't done a novel food submission, and nothing bad happens to them, you'd be pretty angry. So you can imagine that the companies that have submitted novel food dossiers are going to be expecting the FSA to enforce. Otherwise, what was the point? What was the point of all that? As I said, the FSA doesn't directly enforce. It's devolved to local authority trading standards. Now, I have quite a lot of experience with trading standards. Previously, when I was a criminal lawyer, you know, I used to deal with trading standards prosecutions all the time. And look, in my experience, local authorities trading standards is chronically underfunded and under-resourced. So how much help, how much funding they are going to be given to actually take up enforcement, I don't know. We will have to wait and see. But these are the powers that they have. So if you have a great retailer, Boots or whoever, stocking your product and you're not novel food compliant, then they can force that retailer to take your products off the shelves. And you can imagine that any retailer who's getting pressure from trading standards is not going to want to do business with you again. If you're selling via your e-commerce platforms and you are not novel food compliant, then you can be forced to remove those products from sale. You can be issued with a stop notice. And if you don't act upon that, then there can be severe repercussions. And finally, if they're so minded, they can find out where you're storing your stock if it's in the UK, and they can come to your warehouse and they can take it as well. So if they do enforce, then we could see some really interesting stuff going on. We just have to wait and see whether it actually happens. So what's going to happen in the future? So look, I didn't want the novel food regime to come in. I think we all know that the CBD products are so positive. They're doing so much good for everybody. We haven't seen any evidence of any long-term harm. So you can understand why people were reluctant to get involved in this. But it's happened and it's here. We have to make the best of it. And hopefully the idea being it will take a little bit of time for all of us to get to grips with this process, but eventually it should become much, much easier. And the analogy I'm going to make is the introduction of the Tobacco Products Directive. So the TPD was introduced in May 2014 and it came into force in May 2016. So the UK implemented TPD into domestic law under the tobacco-related products regulations. And back when this directive was brought in, I think the vape sector in particular was up in arms. They're like, no, this is going to kill the whole industry. This is bad news. This is really, really bad for business because it imposes substantial regulatory requirements. So, you know, you've got to report on the ingredients that you're using, EU-wide tracking and tracing to combat illicit trade. We had safety quality notifications. And, you know, any new product being on the market had to be registered via the EU portal. So, look, the vape sector were really, really worried about this. And what they tried to do was avoid it as much as possible. But in the end, they actually just made the best of it. And in fact, several years on, most people probably in the vape sector would say it was actually a good thing. There is a clear route to compliance. Now there is an EU portal where you can register your tobacco products. There's clear rules. Everyone understands how to be compliant. I genuinely hope that the way TPD was a challenge for the vape sector, and we're currently seeing novel food being a challenge for the CBD industry, I genuinely hope that in a few years, novel food will be as simple as TPD is. You know, we'll have some sort of portal which new products can be registered with a minimum of fuss and expense. Because the base ingredients have all been proven to be safe, it'll just be unusual formulations or new products that you will have to register. So that's my hope for the future. We will have to wait and see whether I am right or wrong. So thank you. That's it. That's the end of it. Sorry about the technical difficulties. This is me. You know who I am. Thanks again to Alexej and the team. I'm just going to say Alexej is like the hardest working man in CBD. He starts at 9 a.m., starts messaging me with all his European clients. It gets to 5 p.m. and then all the Americans wake up and he starts messaging me about them. And it's relentless, but it motivates me to work even harder. So I just want to say thank you to Alexej and his team for letting me do these webinars. It's been really fun.